Right. Right.
So he had his existing client base that he could go back to and stuff like that. But obviously doing pretty well. He's got 3 houses.
Yeah. One in the Hamptons. I mean, that's not cheap.
Well, I mean, Delray Beach, Manhattan, and Hamptons.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong trifecta of locations right there. So
I've got a friend from school that lives in Delray Beach, and he can't afford a house there. I mean, like he does really well. He makes 6 figures, but he does nonprofit consulting.
Yeah.
And he makes 6 figures, and he still rents an apartment.
Yeah, I mean, it's Palm Beach County, so I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive. So
all the New Yorkers, it's South New York, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
Let's see. I think I've got us going. Let's see. Yeah, we're going live. Cool. All right, I'm ready. We'll go 3 and 2 and 1. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Sean, it'd be hard to top that last episode. That was pretty good.
Man, that was like some legendary stuff right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I lost track of time.
I know. Stuff. Yeah. I mean, I could have talked. I mean, I could literally like hang out with Rich and just talk shop like all night, and then whatever else, like just a cool guy. We talked a little bit about Mark Ford too. I mean, the few times I've been able to hang out with him as well, that was he's same. They're very similar in that way.
Yeah.
Just easy to talk to, all that stuff, and just so much like knowledge and wisdom. It's unbelievable. So
I meant to ask him. That was another question I meant to ask him. Like what, Mark Ford. We talked about Mark Ford before. Michael Masterson.
Yeah.
Like, is there any stuff he's working on, like new books or anything like that?
But I don't know.
Forgot to mention that.
Yeah, we'll have to reach out. Yeah, I know Ryan's interviewed him on his podcast, but that's been a while. So but who knows? Maybe we can get him on.
I bet we can
get some philosophy of direct marketing. He really thinks about this stuff like at a whole different level than everybody else. So today. I've got the old paper here in my hands, my never nicotine stained fingers.
Nope.
So we're going to be going through a book, and
there
it is. You gave it away, but there it is.
I got
in
the
business and life. This little section from the summary that I pulled down says, in business and life, we're constantly asking other people to make decisions, and we know very little about the way our brains work in order to make them. If you want somebody to decide to use your products and services, shouldn't you know how their brain works? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how your brain works, the 2 systems that make your brain work and how people make decisions.
Yeah.
So
I've just gotten started in this book. I'm in like the 4th or I think I'm like the 5th chapter right now, but it's really interesting. It's one of these in depth. It's pretty thick. If you actually, you got the summary, but if you go through the book, it's pretty hefty reading. A lot of research. Yeah. I like that version a little better.
Yeah. I think I listened to this a couple of years ago on Audible.
Yeah.
And I forgot it was that big, but I think I remember now it was like a 11 or one of those 10 or 11 hour Audibles instead of the typical 6.
Right.
So, and it was not one that you could really play at 2 times speed because it's pretty dense in places.
Right.
So, we'll go through it, and I'll spoil the end for you with my summary here.
Oh, okay.
But
I went through a section, and I texted you earlier today. One thing we're going to talk about is priming. We've talked about priming before on the podcast, but particularly interesting in our day and age today. Where people are, either for whatever reason, related to this pandemic, or I guess if you want to call it that, then you can. But for whatever reason, there's a lot of priming going on in the media. So
don't give too much away.
Okay, all right.
We need them to stay tuned a little longer. Yeah. So. All right. Well, I'm going to disappoint you again with a rerun beer, but that's the last one. The fridge is empty after that.
All right.
So I'll have to take a trip up.
Okay.
To,
Well, you gave it
Total
away
Wine.
last episode because you hadn't been out. You said you hadn't been out all week.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I haven't been out. So
been in the trenches, man.
I've been
Working.
Yeah. Do new job, new client.
Yep.
And signed another one like 2 days ago. So like it's all over the place, man. Just side project. One's just a one-off project. So
yeah.
Busier than I've been. So in the middle of Siri thinks I'm talking to her. Hold on. In the middle of this quarantine, I've been busier than I've been in years.
Wait a minute. I thought the economy had ground. I thought we were grinding to a halt.
Yeah,
okay?
Nobody's working. I mean, everybody's got all this free time.
What are you doing?
Yeah, everybody's got all this free time. I don't know. I mean, I get it, and no hard feelings. Like if you're in the restaurant industry or hotel industry,
sure, yeah.
But other than that, I really don't know who these people are that have all this free time. I haven't met them. I've talked to several people, even though I'm not supposed to. Mm-hmm. Like we went to a rally last weekend. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
So we went to a rally last weekend, and even those guys that we went with, I mean, they were busy. So don't buy the hype. We'll talk about that in this book too.
No, people are working.
All right. So I'm going to go first because mine's boring and you'll have a better thing. So I pulled back.
A better one.
This one was really good last time. So I'm pulling it back out.
Mm-hmm.
The Texas Bourbon Barrel Imperial Coffee Ale.
Yeah.
Definitely like definitely when we talked to Jason with the so hey, for those of you listening or watching on YouTube's or video, so check it out. When you have your own podcast, like you get signed copies of stuff.
Absolutely.
It's like one of the little perks. Like, so thanks, Jason, if you're listening.
Yep.
That was a great interview, and the book is really good too.
Yeah, dropped us in a book, each a signed copy of the book in the mail.
Yeah.
Within a few days, we got it.
So if you're an author on the show and you have not done that, like reach out and give it, ask for our address so you can send us your book.
Yeah. And then we'll interview you.
Or if we've already interviewed you, send your book if you didn't send it.
That's right.
So this is just a 11.6 alcohol Imperial Coffee Ale. So this is it's a stout ale, right? Okay. Get it? Stout ale because it's stout strong. Ale.
Yep.
So that's me.
I do like the can.
Yeah, the can is really cool. It's one of my favorite cans. Like and it's all black and white. Go figure. Black
and white.
And red all over?
With no red all over. Okay. Not like the newspaper business.
Not the old newspaper joke. Nope. Riddle. We were talking about riddles on the last episode.
That's right.
So yeah, there's just a nice creamy coffee ale.
So
what do you got?
Well,
as soon as you're done chewing.
Yeah, I'm having a little beef jerky. I better move this away because I'm
podcast etiquette 101. Out the window.
I know. I hate it. I should take my own advice because, or my own annoyance because I hate when people eat on their podcast. But yet, it's that time of the day we're having a beer, and I'm just naturally want a snack. So
yeah, and typically they're pretty strong beers, so it's
exactly
you need a little buffer.
So today I have I thought, I was at Total Wine and More this afternoon, and I told you I must have spent like 40 minutes just browsing because it's been so long. I haven't been to Total Wine and More since before the, this whole pandemic thing. And so I just spent time walking around and actually spent, there was a lady, she was obviously, she was like in a nursing, I guess she was in her nursing garb. She had her mask on. So, I was on an aisle. She walked up close to me. And I kind of felt like I was being shamed. She kind of had the judgmental stare at me, quite a few times as she was kind of working her way around me at the aisle while I was looking at beer. I was trying to, I was minding my own business, but I really felt the stare of shame.
Yeah. So you were a no masker.
I was a no masker.
Yeah.
So
forget Republicans and Democrats. It's like maskers and no maskers now. Whole new division among the country.
That's right. Right. But I have for this episode, I picked out a lot of singles when I was there because I kind of pulled your thing, I'm like, I'm going to load up on a bunch of singles for our next few episodes. But for this one, I picked up one from Oscar Blues, who I've had, we've had on before. This is a Death by King Cake. Death by King Cake. So this is an ale with vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, orange peel, and pecans or pecans. We say pecans
or pecan.
Pecans. Death by King Cake. So we'll
King
see.
Cake. King Cake is. What is King Cake? I guess it obviously has vanilla and orange and.
So I was just thinking, I don't know. The first thing that came to my mind is like for this, especially for this episode that we're doing on, just talking on the topic today of thinking fast and slow, and some of the things we're going to be talking about, like, the politicians. What do they say? What is Marie Antoinette? What did she say? Let them eat cake. Is that the one? Is that who said that?
Sure. It was either her or Guy Fieri. No, maybe it was who's the cake boss? What's his name?
Yeah, that's Guy Fieri's.
Yeah, he's diners, drive-ins, and dives.
I don't know who Cake Boss is. So.
Whoever he is. So,
all right. So this is give you a description. This is 6.5 ABV.
Okay.
Colorado herbed spiced beer, inspired by the traditional Mardi Gras treat with a decadent white.
That's where I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mardi Gras. That's where I've heard of it.
Mardi Gras. Yeah, it looks kind of like a Yeah, well, look at the saint. Yeah, there you go.
See? There you go. You just look at the can. The answers are all there.
I didn't even notice that. It's got like kind of like my Saints logo.
It's kind of like my Charlie and the Chocolate Factory can.
So let's see what this looks like. Oh, this is really light.
Yeah.
This is super light.
Vanilla cake. Is it an ale or is it a?
Yeah, what'd you say? It is it is an ale with vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg and pecans.
Little pecans in there.
All right.
I don't see the pecans, but all right.
Cheers.
Cheers. There's your sound effect.
Oh yeah. There we go. That's got to be louder. Here we go. There we go.
Yeah, the applause was a little weak. I talked over it on the last episode. I apologize. I have to send an apology note to Rich.
So here's the thing. We talked about this last episode. So we're going to start doing our rating system on each beer is a 5-pint scale, not a 5-point scale, a 5-pint scale.
Yeah.
It's anonymous with our name. So I'm giving this, think about it. I'm going to give this it's a little sweet, but it's really light. I would say about 2.5.
I was gonna ask, can we do quarter, half points? Like how?
Yeah, we can do points.
We doing halves or quarters or just halves?
You can do any decimal you want.
Oh wow, cool. So I'm gonna give this one same thing. It's a little sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really good. Like it's a sipping beer, right? It's not like a chugging beer. It's not Pabst Blue Ribbon or Bud Light. Okay. So I would give this a 4.5. It's
4.5.
Yeah, it's good. Well, it's a bourbon barrel, right? It's got to be good.
There we go. Yeah.
Anything in a bourbon barrel is just.
Yeah.
I think I'm primed to believe
that
it's
automatically
better.
Gets it at 3 pints, and then anything up from that is.
Well, yeah, like we'll be talking about. Like I'm primed to believe that anything bourbon barrel is better.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Same. All right.
So tell me, I'll let you kick off since I have an entire summary from front to back, and you're in like chapter 5, and you're kind of getting into it. So what is the whole idea behind thinking fast and thinking slow?
So this book really digs into it's kind of there's a lot of academic stuff, like research, a lot of case studies and things like that. So I kind of compare it to maybe like a Cialdini type, the influence, the principles of influence, but almost on a much deeper level, because there's some areas that are textbook. So there's some really good examples, but you have to read. I mean, it's not like skim reading.
No,
you get into this.
Yeah, it's pretty deep stuff.
But I had read about this book last year. I was reading another book, and I want to say it was a book that I mentioned prior to this, like EQ Selling, I believe. And this book was actually mentioned in it, and I never did really get a hold of it. Then we had our guest a couple of weeks ago. Forgive me, I'm having a blank here. Oh goodness.
Give me a hint.
Our guest.
Which one? We've been racking up the guests lately. I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
All right, give me a second here. I'm drawing a blank, but it was let's see. What was I have to go back. Okay, I'm cheating. I'm going back on our website.
He or she?
David Priemer.
Okay.
David Priemer. Yeah. So his book on Sell the Way You Buy. So he had actually mentioned this book on the episode. So you and I both kind of jot down some notes during the podcast. And this is one that I wrote down, and I actually ordered it because that was like the second time. And anytime when I hear like something in a book that I really like, and then someone mentions it a second time, I know that's a book that I have to grab. So
here's a cool trick that I use. So when I'm reading a book, if it mentions another book, which they always do, I'll flip to the back of the book. Like if I have a hard copy, I'll flip to the back of the book and I'll write down on the very like back cover page the name of the book.
Right.
And you'll notice that if you read in a niche like we tend to do a lot, you'll hear the same books referenced over and over.
Absolutely. And
you can kind of start to pick out, okay, like if I could just really wrap my head around this book, because it's mentioned like every other time I read in the genre, you could probably read that book that's mentioned, 2 or 3 times, like Influence or, in the internet marketing world or the copywriting world, there's those set books that come up over and over and over.
Yeah.
And then sometimes every once in a while, you just, you hear about this like really obscure book. And if you don't capture it and write it down somewhere where it's easy to find it, flipping back through the book is a pain.
Right.
You could also do the same thing and just start a notes tab in your iPhone. With like books to read.
Yep.
So just a little tip there from the old
good.
Persuasion by the Pint tip segment of the show. Brand new segment just started 30 seconds ago.
So here's the one thing, and I texted you this morning because this is one. I'm on like chapter, like I said, I'm on chapter 5 right now.
Oh yeah, this is kind of scary actually.
It's scary.
Yeah,
it is.
The quote.
It really is, and it's kind of
because you see it
align
because you see it happening.
The times that we live in today. So here's the quote, and I sent this to you, but I want to read this. Because it's on priming, and we've talked about priming in the past, but there's this one section on chapter 4 in priming says the evidence of priming studies suggests that reminding people of their mortality increases the appeal of authoritarian ideas, which may become reassuring in the context of the terror of death. That's pretty powerful. We're kind of seeing that right now, aren't we?
Yeah. Like people are okay. So what I hear when I saw that, I was like, oh, so there's a lot of talk of death, especially kind of in the beginning of this, and still some, depending on which side you fall on.
Right.
Just really ramping up that fear of mortality.
Right.
Allowed all of this. So priming with the fear of mortality allowed and actually welcomed, not just allowed, but like welcomed.
Absolutely.
This authoritative measures that normally would be like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
But now like, and I'd never really realized that, but to see that that's like actual, just, kind of science and how people's brain works is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Because now, that all you kind of, which, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because that's part of how news kind of keeps things going. They tell the scary stuff that reminds you of mortality,
absolutely.
Murders and car wrecks and tornadoes and floods and all this kind of stuff. And it, at the same time, it also makes them an authority as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I think of the other big event in our history within our country, you know, in our lifetime. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have happened throughout the history, but Sean, in our lifetime, you know, what's another event that we can think of where, you know, people were primed, you know, through, you know, realizing their mortality or the fear of death or the fear of what's out there to get them, caused us to easily kind of give up or seek authoritarian measures was
Yeah.
9/11, right?
Right. Yep.
You know, last big event where, you know, terrorism, you know, people were like, okay, you know, we got to get on board. We got to put all these protective measures. And so I think that that's, you know, you can look at examples of that. And from this research, it shows, you know, people, they seek, you know, and there's, you know, here's the key phrase in that I underlined is that, um, you know, they appeal. So they, let's see. So increases the appeal, which become reassuring. So these ideas, these authoritarian ideas become reassuring in the context of the terror of death. So that's interesting. I mean, that's, you know, any kind of authoritarian figure that will protect you, that offers a level of protection, is reassuring in times like this.
I mean, it makes sense, right? If you think about, we've talked about the kind of the old part of your brain, the lizard
Yep.
brain. We've talked about tribes and things like that. If there was a lion outside of a tribe, you think about this, like, I can see where this is ingrained in us as a kid, right? So if I'm a kid and I'm running out, my ball goes in the street and I start running after it.
Yeah.
My parent, if they're out in the yard, is going to yell at me and it's going to be very serious, it's going to be very authoritative.
Mm-hmm.
And then they remind me when I get back, they're like, you could have died, you could have gotten run over. Like, so there, I think there's this connection that happens. And he talks about this in the book, these high point emotion.
Right.
So like the first couple of times that happens to you as a kid and your parent like really freaks out.
Yeah.
There's this lock of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's something there, and the book doesn't really go into this much detail, but my theory is it's that tie of, okay, my parents saved my life because they were really like strong and authoritarian right there, and it saved my life.
Right.
So that must be okay.
Yeah.
Right. So then we carry that memory with us throughout life, whether it's conscious or subconscious, mostly subconscious.
Yeah.
That's what tribe leaders do, right? If the lion was outside right in the bushes, like he'd probably tell everybody, like, okay, like very firmly what to do.
Sure.
And there's something like there's quote
something
says,
comforting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very reassuring that somebody is taking control and somebody is in charge.
Yeah.
Kind of in the same line, a friend of mine posted on Facebook this week, and I thought it was really good. And he was talking about conspiracy theories and why people believe them. And it's kind of for the same reason. It's at least in a conspiracy theory, there's somebody in control.
Right.
And he talks about in this book, he talks about how one thing that we just can't stand is, our brains are lazy and like to look for patterns. In fact, we often see patterns where none exist because we are uncomfortable with the belief that most of what we see in life is random.
Yeah. Right.
So like we hate the idea that things aren't working the way they're supposed to, or that something's not in charge. So like if things are just random, that just feels really scary and hopeless.
Sure.
So anytime somebody comes in and says, this is the way it's going to be, there's a level of comfort in that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to translate that to marketing and persuasion and influence, if you can show somebody the mortality of, in the weight loss ditch, how their weight is, or their fitness is killing them.
Right.
And you can really get them to see it, then you can be authoritative and say, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And it works. Right. Or if you're I think the same thing applies to the mortality of someone's business. If you can really get them to see their business is in mortal danger, then all of a sudden you can come in and be, in your case, like the consultant or whatever, that is going to lay down the law and say, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
But you can't really do that until you stir up that mortality
fear. Yeah.
and that fear of mortality,
Yeah.
whether it's mortality of the business or their personal lives or their career or, whatever it is you're trying to sell.
That's why health, anything health related, people are like, you know what, that industry is, people have been promoting products and launching products for ages.
Yeah.
We're talking back since the 1800s. There are elixirs for everything under the sun to keep you from dying or keep you from suffering any ailment or whatever, so people are looking for that. So that's never going to go away.
What's the old saying? You can never be too rich, too thin, or too good looking. Right. And all of those are a form of death.
Yeah.
Right. Financial death, business death, the death of my youth, even if it's not the death, so you go through a couple different phases, right? That's why makeup and fashion, all those kind of things can sell, is because they're really playing into the loss or the death of youth, or the death of being in style and up to date. So there's a lot of ways to play mortality other than just like physically dying.
Right.
And if
it can be like we were talking with Rich on the last podcast.
Yeah.
We're talking about the death of that ad campaign that went out that we were very familiar with, Death of America, back in the last big recession back in 2010. A lot of people are familiar with that in the financial industry.
Yeah.
So that's a different type of mortality. That's not a physical, but that's like an economic.
It was the end of America as we know it. It was like an ideal that died. So that's, that's a great point. Like, there's all these different deaths. And if you were to tie your business as the solution to that death, or to prevent that death, then, so if you become the mask, mask and the gloves for your client, for your prospects, when there's a pandemic going on, whatever that pandemic is for them, health, business, marketing, whatever, then you got a pretty good shot at being able to take control of that narrative and that conversation and literally be able to guide them to safety, which is your solution and your product.
Yeah, no doubt.
Of course, like any of these things, you can also use that for evil and not for good. So
of course,
have to be
just
careful.
like anything.
Yeah.
I found with this priming effect, it's also very effective on yourself as well. So here's an example. I find that, priming, you can use things to motivate yourself. So here's one example of what I find to initiate more success in my own business if I prime myself with things that are really positive. So I find if I watch something that's very encouraging before I do a sales call or before I go into a meeting, I have a much better success rate than if I were to watch something that was debilitating or that is not, it doesn't build me up. So, for example, there's a movie, my wife and I, we watched a movie this week, and it's one that I've watched a number of times. I really like it, but it's called The Founder with Ray Kroc. I don't know if you've watched that, Sean, but it's really good. And there's a lot of things that weren't good with, the way he went about his business. But he was a very, if you watched his life and the way he went about business, he's a very ambitious person. So if I watch a movie like that, or if I watch a movie like Glengarry, Glen Ross, or some other movie like that, or Boiler Room, or one of those other movies, if you watch something like that before you go into a sales presentation, I can assure you that your success rate within that presentation is going to increase. And it's just, it's a priming effect that when you use something like that, that's very positive, or that gives you some good some good lessons beforehand, as opposed to something that really debilitates you. And there's some examples in that chapter where if you read something or you watch something that's not effective, like for example, if I watch something like The Office, which is a comical show and it's enjoying, I don't know if you watch that, but
Well,
my
yeah,
kids
yeah.
love it. But if I watch that before, it's not going to help me, because that's
Well,
that's that's
yeah. I
like
mean,
the opposite.
you think about what you're priming yourself to believe.
Right.
It's that the office that you're going into is a bunch of idiots, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, how could you?
Yeah.
You're going to treat those people differently after
Right.
seeing that, because
Yeah.
you know your business, you walk into people's offices a lot,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So,
Yep. And
yeah,
if you
another,
act like any of that, which is funny, it's entertaining, and there's a place for it.
yeah,
There's not a place for it when you're in business. You want to model the behaviors of people that are successful. And
yeah,
that's a parody. So,
yeah. I love the like the Motiversity YouTube videos and some of those things that are
yeah,
like 20 minutes of like the theatrical music with the
sure.
Jim Rohn quotes and
Yep.
Tony Robbins quotes and those kind of things. Those
Mm-hmm.
are great for firing you up.
Yeah.
And speaking of movies, I think one of my favorite like movies, like motivational movies, is The Pursuit of Happiness with
Oh
Will
yeah.
Smith.
Love that movie.
Like if you can't go like sit through some pain and discomfort after watching that, like
Wow.
because that's a true story. Like some of these others are, I mean, The Founder's a true story, but others, Boiler Room, I'm sure it's based on true stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Wolf of Wall Street, but that's a whole nother thing. But like the first part of it, it gets crazy at the end, but the first part, like his hustle and stuff, and the first part of the Wolf of Wall Street is like legit stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, The Pursuit of Happiness, to me, that's just like
that movie. Yeah.
so good, so good. Or We Bought a Zoo, even that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Perseverance and all that stuff. So
that's another one. Matt Damon. I love that.
Yeah, I was actually talking about that on a coaching call today. I was like, sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage.
That's good.
My favorite quote from the whole movie. So I want to talk about, have you gotten to anchoring? It's kind of like priming.
Yes. I don't think I've gotten to that yet, but I feel like I know what we're about to dig into.
And I'm not sure exactly. Maybe we'll have to find an expert that knows the difference really between like anchoring and priming.
Yeah.
Like what is the real difference? And maybe you'll find it, it's not here in the summary and I don't remember the differences, but it says anchoring effect is a phenomenon that occurs when the first number we see in a particular situation sets the tone for all future numbers. And that stuck out to me because I hope nobody unsubscribes when they hear me say this, but I used to sell timeshare. So like literally sold timeshare. And one of the best sales guys in the building, this was over in the Smoky Mountains. So I sold for, I think Wyndham. So I was selling, Wyndham at Smoky Mountains. So people are coming in for their free Dollywood passes or whatever, or their free, Ripley's Aquarium passes. They think they're going to be in there for, 60 minutes or 90 minutes, whatever the promise was. And our job is to take them from wanting something free while they're on vacation to selling them $20,000 worth of timeshare, right? And we got to flip that in like an hour and a half. So this guy, one guy, he would anchor people right up front because, the sticker shock is always like the biggest problem. Like, people don't want to be there. They want, they just want their free gift and all that kind of stuff. But like logically, the presentation, like everything makes sense. Like it's hard to argue with it. It makes a lot of sense. The presentations are dialed in. They know what they're doing. But the sticker shock is always a problem. Like people don't come on vacation expecting to drop 20 grand or enter a contract for 20 or 30 grand or whatever.
Right.
So especially for 1 week of vacation, even though you do the math and all that stuff, because eventually you end up at that big number.
Yep.
So what this guy would do to anchor people, he would anchor people to a really high number as soon as he picked them up in the lobby.
Oh, wow.
Right. So he would come in and he'd say, "Hey, how are y'all doing today?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's great. We're just here to get our gift." And The same thing everybody else says.
Yeah.
We're not going to buy anything. And he's like, oh, that's okay. That's okay. I just made a nice sale for $60,000 on the last couple. So you're good. Right. So now they're like, holy crap, $60,000. What the? So then when he reveals like 20,000, they're like relieved in a way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they were anchored to this super big number. And now he's dropped it. And that's one thing I think you can, and it, by the way, it does not have to be like, if you're selling dollars, it doesn't have to be dollars. Like any number works. We've seen these studies in some other books we've talked about and things like that. So if I know that I'm going to sell a coaching package for 10,000, really all I got to do is just throw out big numbers about anything.
Sure.
And the brain like then associates.
You talk about $1 million and then.
Yeah. Or I could talk about.
Or 100,000.
Hey, did you see the Super Bowl? Ads are running like, $1 million for 30 seconds.
Right.
Totally unrelated. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But they now, their brain, like $1 million, 30 seconds. Okay. Files that away. And then when you get to the end of your presentation, it's like $10,000 for 6 months.
Doesn't sound like much.
It's still a shock.
It is.
But there's a part of their brain that's like, oh, it's not as bad as $1 million in 30 seconds. So,
right. Because these companies are spending, $1 million for 30 seconds. This is a bargain, right?
Yeah. So anytime you get those numbers, especially if you have kind of a pitch, and that's why you see all the time in sales letters and offers online, you'll see the price drop, right? Because those work. I think where people miss the opportunity is they don't put those numbers higher and sooner.
Yep.
And not necessarily the price, but just start throwing out some numbers sooner. And that is why you'll see people say, like Rich, we were talking with Rich, right? He's done 15 billion. He's responsible for $15 billion in sales of his clients. Yeah. Well, you can't get much bigger than that as far as proof, right? So he, if he were to do a presentation, he probably throws that out pretty early, right?
Right.
So then his coaching services later on seem like a bargain.
Sure.
Because he's helped generate 15 billion. I mean, there's actually two different things going on there, but the fact is you've already got that big number out.
Yeah.
We'll have to have RC back on. He's my buddy out in Seattle. Yeah. He does this in a sales conversation. He'll talk with people and he'll work them up what they want in a 2, 3, and 5 year, like what their outcome is and in dollar amounts. And he'll just work it up so that then when he reveals his price, it's super cheap. You probably do something similar.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I use that effect all the time. I think I read that years back or it's been a few years, but Cialdini in his book, his follow-up book, remember when we went through that book, Persuasion. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He talks about that, using that method to, kind of bring people back down a little bit, starting high and then bring people back down. So
yeah, it's a relief of sorts. All right. So what else you got from the book? I've got a couple other things, but
that's really the main thing. Like I said, I'm early on in this book, but it's just I find like priming and it's a powerful tool. I mean, and you can use it like you said, priming and then using this method, anchoring, are two really powerful ways to get people to, using that to get them to your point of view. I just find it interesting. I think given the times that we're in, just how effective it is on people that are susceptible to, fear. So.
Yeah. And the thing is like one thing he talks about is there's two systems of the brain and it's kind of the same. It's kind of just a different spin on subconscious and conscious.
Yeah.
He calls it system 1 and system 2, which is the fast and the slow. One is just always happening. It's automatic, how which leg you use to put on your pants in the morning, right? That's system 1, automatic, just happens. Like you'd have to stop and think about it and like recreate, like you'd almost have to, if I asked you right now, like which leg do you put in your pants first in the morning? You'd have to stop, think about it, and kind of reenact either visually or like physically to figure it out.
Yeah.
But every morning you do it and you don't even think about it.
Right.
You know, so that's the system 1 stuff. And then system 2 stuff is stuff that's more complicated, that requires, thinking slower.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is, I guess we can pick up on this next week if you want to continue this book.
Yeah, I'd love to.
System 1 controls, for the most part, system 2. And we have a tendency to think that system 2 is running the show because we're more active with that.
Sure.
But system 1 actually influences system 2 a lot more than we expect. And priming and anchoring is an example.
Right.
And one thing I want to talk about next week, I'm not going to say the word, but there's because I don't want people to go look it up or anything, but we'll kick off with the next section. There's some really cool stuff that you can use to your advantage. No understanding that's what's going on, that these old patterns are running the show for most people, and you can tap into those and bypass most of the logic and everything else.
Ooh,
and just go straight to what actually makes their decisions for them.
Wow, that's a good teaser.
That's a good teaser, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned.
I should write copy or something.
You should. Have you ever thought about being a copywriter?
I thought about it. I don't know. Seems like a lot of work.
All right. With that said, man, we're gonna close out, and we'll pick this up on the next episode, and it should be good. Like I said, fantastic book, and again, the title is Thinking Fast and Slow. Thinking Fast and Slow. What is it? It's like 2011, so it's not been a recent book, but it's really good. So
yeah, I know a lot of people were talking about it when it came out, and there's so many books that come out, like really good books kind of get forgotten after the first year or two.
Yeah,
but there's some really good stuff out there. So, and
yeah.
So
I had somebody. So I posted this on social media, and I had a friend that reached out, and he said he's a former military vet. He said he read this book in his military studies master's degree. So
wow,
that's it's pretty big if it's being used by the military. So
yeah,
good stuff.
All right.
Well, we'll pick it up on next episode. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find us over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on any of our podcast platforms. And as always, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
All right. Cut the live. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
It was really good with stop.